Hi guys, today we're going to be painting a Scion Taurox Prime from start to finish. But first of all I want to say a huge thank you to my YouTube channel sponsors Goblin Gaming. If you check the description box down below you'll find a direct link to their web store, and every time you purchase something from the web store it greatly helps my YouTube channel, so please use the link provided in the description box. I know there's already a fantastic tutorial uploaded by Duncan from the Games Workshop painting team there, but I wanted to take this a tiny little bit further by adding a little bit more weathering to the vehicle, and we're also going to be airbrushing, which is going to leave some really nice colour blends behind. Well, I really hope you like this tutorial guys, and get comfortable, go grab yourselves a nice hot drink, maybe a nice cold beer, and we'll get started with the tutorial. I first of all start by priming the miniature using Alclad 2's lacquer primer. It's important to note guys that it's very harmful if inhaled, so please make sure you're in a well ventilated area and you're wearing a respirator. Also you need to use a good quality airbrush with PTFE solvent proof seals. On lesser quality airbrushes this lacquer primer will damage your airbrush. I'm priming here at about 20 psi and 3 to 4 inches away from the model, and as you can see I'm very slowly building up that primer layer, and I'm constantly moving the airbrush to make sure I don't saturate the model with too much primer in any one spot. It's really great to have a pair of tweezers at hand for small pieces that you don't want to be holding in your hand while you're priming, as this will just create two problems. One, you'll get extra paint on your hands that you don't want, which I always do anyway, but more importantly you won't be handling the wet paint and smudging it around the part. After the primer layered, thoroughly dried, I'm coming in with Games Workshop's base paint, the Fang. Now Games Workshop do a range of airbrush ready paints. Now I don't think they're that good, they're very expensive, they are in little bottles, and you can just thin down the regular paints just with regular water as I've done here, and as you can see it's spraying out of the airbrush absolutely perfect. I thin it down roughly 1 part water to 1 part paint, and as you can see out of my 0.35mm Awata Eclipse airbrushes that I got from airbrushes.com, it sprays effortlessly. I always use a hairdryer to speed up the drying process guys, but as you can see I'm constantly moving the hairdryer and I've got it on the lowest heat setting. If you are going to use a hairdryer to speed up the drying process of the paint, make sure it's on the lowest setting and always keep the hairdryer moving. Now we're going to create our first highlight using layer paint Thunderhawk Blue from Games Workshop. Again this needs to be thinned down in the airbrush cup, and I thin it down roughly 1 to 1 with water. Here you can see I'm leaving the Fang behind in areas where I think shadow would naturally form. I'm also creating some really cool and subtle colour blends, like on the back hatch of the Taurox there. I've left it the Fang towards the bottom, and then I've created a nice colour blend of the Thunderhawk Blue towards the top of that hatch. Here you'll see me going around the Taurox, creating those highlights using the Thunderhawk Blue. Now we're going to create some extreme highlights using Games Workshop's layer paint Fenrisian Grey. Again, it needs to be thinned down in the airbrush cup 1:1 with water. And as before, I'm going round all the areas where I think a highlight would look good, but I'm also adding it to areas that I think would look cool. Now we're going to use Games Workshop's Reikland Flesh Shade. This is a really nice browny reddy tone, and this is going to create some really nice shading on the tank. We're doing what's known as a pin wash or a panel line wash, where we're only placing it in the crevices of the actual model. We're not washing all over the vehicle, as this would lead really nasty staining behind. Here you can see an extreme close-up of what's happening. I load up the brush, not with too much wash, but just enough though that I can go over the rivets and the panel lines and just create that shading on the vehicle that's going to look really nice, and it's going to help those highlights really pop out and come to life. And here you can see what the vehicle looks like after all of the shade had been applied. And as you can see, even at this early stage, the vehicle's starting to look really good. Now we're really going to make the tank pop by using Games Workshop's layer paint Fenrisian Grey. It's important to know that when dry brushing you have to remove pretty much all of the paint on some paper towel, and when you've removed most of the paint, then it's time to start dry brushing. I'm using a Games Workshop large dry brush here guys, but the most important thing is you use a very good flat-headed brush for this process. Do not use your really nice Winsor & Newton Series 7 brushes to dry brush guys, as it's very brutal on the brushes. And here's what the vehicle looks like after applying that Fenrisian Grey dry brush. The panels are really starting to pop out now. Now we're going to create some chipping effects on the vehicle using some sponge that I got from a blister pack of miniatures, and we're going to be chipping on some Games Workshop's base paint Rhinox hide. And as you can see, I'm focusing more so on the very extreme edges of the panels where I think chips would naturally occur. I've also added some random chips to the centre of some panels where I'll be leaving streaking marks behind from. Now we're going to create some rust streaks using MIG Ammo's light rust wash. Now it's important to note that I'm not using an acrylic wash here, this is enamel, and this works way better for washing than acrylic washes. I could have used Agrax Shade for example, or Gryphone Sepia. I don't think it's called Gryphone Sepia anymore. Seraphim Sepia I think it's called now. But yeah, they just don't work as good as enamel products. What I mean by that is, by using some white spirit, I can actually thin out the streaks and I can pull them down and stump them and make them look way more believable than you can do with acrylic washes. So when it comes to adding rust, actually try something new. Pick up an enamel wash, get some quality white spirit, and as you can see here, I'm thinning it down a little bit with white spirit, and it will give really authentic looking rust streaks. And here you can see an extreme close-up of where I'm adding some of those rust streaks to, and it really does look good, and the extra colour of the orange from the rust really adds another layer of depth to what is already starting to look like a good vehicle. here I'm painting all the metallics using Vallejo's metal colour gunmetal. This is a fantastic paint and I think it's better than pretty much most acrylic metallics on the market. It's very thin, so it's not going to clog up the details, but it still gives one coat coverage, so I highly recommend the Vallejo metal colour range of paints. Games Workshop's Corn Red is going to be painted on all the panels that are due to be painted in a red colour. That includes the two side panels with the two lions on and the very front bumper panel with the skull on. I'm a huge fan of the Army Painters metallics, and Greedy Gold's one of my favourites. I prefer it to Games Workshop's metallics, to be honest guys, as I think they paint smoother and they're a little bit thinner as well. And here we can see the state of my thumb. No, we can see what the vehicle looks like after all of the metallics have been painted onto the vehicle. Games Workshop Shade Paint Caribou Crimson is going to be painted on all the red panels on the vehicle. The vehicle gets two washes. Everything gets washed in the Army Painters Strong Tone, and then once this is dried, all the silver metallics get a second coat of the Army Painters Dark Tone. So Strong Tone on every part of the vehicle that has metallics on it, so all the silver and all the gold metallics, and then all the silver metallics get a second coat of dark tone, which really starts to deepen down the metallics and make them look really cool. Broken Toad's pigment is going to be used to create a muddy effect on the vehicle. You can use any manufacturer of pigment, to be honest. I just so happen to be using Broken Toad. We're also going to be using the Army Painter's Anti-Shine Matte Varnish. Now what we do is we mix the matte varnish in with the pigment, and that's going to act as a binder or a sealer, if you like, to seal in the pigments on the vehicle. The reason I'm using pigment as opposed to paint is it actually creates a really nice textured effect, and it also will leave a more chalky, dusty effect than the acrylic paints, and this will look more like dusty dirt. After allowing the pigment to thoroughly dry, I'm going to dry brush Vallejo Game Air Silver on all of the tracks on the vehicle. And here we can see the finished Taurox Prime. I really hope you've enjoyed this tutorial, guys, and if you have, it does me a great big favour if you share it amongst friends, hit the like button, and also leave a comment and let me know what you think of the tutorial. I read all your comments and I love to give feedback to them as well. I want to say a huge thank you once again to my YouTube channel sponsors, Goblin Gaming. Don't forget to check that description box below if you are purchasing anything from Goblin Gaming. As I mentioned at the start of the video, it really helps the channel. I also want to say a huge thank you to my Patreon supporters. It really does help me that I have got some really great guys that support me on Patreon, so thank you. Lastly, thank you very much for taking the time out of your day to watch this video, guys. I really do hope you enjoyed it, and I'll catch you in the next video. And as a secret bonus, Jax is still snoring away. So thank you from Jax the pug too.